The Shoreline Arts Alliance, dedicated to educating audiences, encouraging artists, engaging our youth, and enriching our community. The Shoreline Arts Alliance presents renowned arts events, including Future Choices Awards and Scholarships, a juried art exhibition for outstanding high school art students at the Lime Academy College of Fine Arts. Awards and scholarships are presented to the top artists selected by judges. Images. Images celebrates the art of photography and encourages excellence among photographic artists. It is the oldest annual statewide juried competition and exhibition open to all Connecticut photographers. Awards are presented. Shoreline's Top Talent, Scholarships in the Arts. A competition for Shoreline High School juniors and seniors of exceptional talent in creative writing, dance, instrumental music, vocal music, theater, and visual arts. Scholarships and mentorships are awarded to the winners. Shakespeare on the Shoreline, the most popular and well-recognized summer cultural event of the Shoreline community. Free admission on the historic Guilford Green to an evening of entertaining, engaging, and educational theater. In conjunction with Shakespeare on the Shoreline, we offer the Rising Star Theater Experience summer program for children 7 to 17, promoting creativity, critical thinking, cooperation, literary enrichment, and self-confidence. Tessie Walden Awards, New Voices in Children's Literature, a competition that encourages and nurtures the creation of exceptional quality books for children by unpublished Connecticut writers and illustrators. Awards are given to the winners. Shoreline Art Space Series and Special Events, a collaborative arts exhibition program showcasing the creativity, expression, and voices of Shoreline fine artists in a local gallery or public setting for free. In addition, we often produce special events from quartets to quintets to celebrated choir and a cappella groups. Member organizations. The Shoreline Arts Alliance provides an arts calendar at www.shorelinearts.org for up-to-the-minute happenings, weekly e-blasts called Arts Week at a Glance and Quotable and Notable, workshops, and a peer advisory network to our members. We have had great success for more than 3 decades and look forward to many more decades filled with outstanding cultural opportunities. To succeed, we need the support of foundations, corporations, local businesses, cultural agencies, and most importantly, individuals, families, and artists like you to make it happen. Your gifts support our mission to educate audiences, encourage artists, engage our youth, and enrich our community.
Hi, I'm Carly Callahan, and welcome to this summer episode of Spotlight on the Arts, presented by Shoreline Arts Alliance. We're so glad to have you with us today, and I want to welcome a wonderful guest who is here to tell us about the amazing season ahead for Opera Theater of Connecticut. Welcome to Alan Mann, who is the artistic director and co-founder of the company. Welcome, Alan.
Well, thank you very much, Carly. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. So Opera Theater of Connecticut has quite a history. Can you share with us how long you've been around and what was the impetus to start this company?
Well, this is our 33rd season, and we started the company because when we started to come out here in the summers, or when I started to come out here in the summers because Kate and her family had been coming out here for years, we wanted to do something to bring the arts to the area. And since I worked strongly in opera and Kate was producing concerts in New York at the time, we thought, well, let's see what we can do about starting an opera company.
Right.
In Clinton, in the town hall, there is a phenomenal theater, a real gem, rare on the shoreline and throughout the state. It's a 500-seat theater with amazing acoustics. And so that's where we decided we would make our home. Right. And it helped because, of course, we live here on the shoreline. One of the points we wanted to make about the company was that we wanted to be a fully professional opera company. And that was, except for the 2 major companies which don't exist anymore here in Connecticut, that was rare. One of the funny stories about that is in one of our first shows, we were casting a young singer in one of the secondary roles, and there was no email, no contact and digital contact.
Back in the dark ages.
Back in the dark ages. So I telephoned her and I ran through the offer and went through the dates and the performance dates, rehearsal schedule. And at the end of it, I said to her, and the fee is $150 per show. And there was a pause, and she said, "Oh, I don't think I can afford that." Because at that time, the standard practice was, well, we're giving you coachings and training in this role, and therefore you have to pay us as a company.
I see.
So,
Okay.
so we reversed that. Anybody who has a name, a line, even if it's a villager or another shopkeeper, we make sure that they get paid. And that keeps the concept of the professionalism of the company high.
Right.
And that was unusual then. I think it's still pretty unusual now for the other companies in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
Another thing that was important to us, because we're a husband and wife team, was the concept of family, how we were going to be in the way we dealt with our singers. I was traveling around the country, literally the world actually at that point, and watched the way that young singers were treated by the production group, and I was not fond of that. So not only are we nurturing, there are many singers who in many other companies would have been fired in the third day of rehearsal for not knowing their music properly enough that we supported and got through it, but we really enjoy having families in our companies. Lead singers will often have a child in the chorus. We have parents with their children. We have grandparents with their children. People wrangle their cousins into working with them on stage or backstage.
Right.
And that really is wonderful for us. It makes a large, comfortable family, a good situation to develop and to grow.
Right, and it sounds like you attract these phenomenal young singers who many have gone on to some really significant careers, is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. We label ourselves a middle ground company, and there's a stage between being at conservatories and schools, and trust me, 33 years ago they were not what they are now. Yale did not have the program it's got, UConn, Southern Connecticut, they did not have voice programs like they do now. And they went from there to trying to get jobs in major houses, and there was a big gap. So we searched for, not only in Connecticut, but around the country, wonderful young developing artists, and we paired them with some seasoned professionals so that they could develop and learn their skills. And we're pretty proud of the fact that we probably have some 20 singers who sang in the Andrews Memorial Theater, the 500-seat hall, less than 3 or 4 years before they made their debuts at the Met, La Scala, the Royal Opera House in England. And so for very little money, in a very, very intimate hall, our audiences get to hear these singers before they're well known.
Right.
And we've joked about trying to bring some of them back to perform the same roles at their fees now. And so instead of paying $50 to hear them in the little Andrews Hall, you'd be paying $250. So we get a sneak preview of some of the great artists developing in this country.
That's amazing to have that kind of a track record, and also to engender that community and that family of singers that are at the beginning of their careers and are going off to who knows what, but it sounds like some really successful productions. So.
Yes, and we give them an extended rehearsal time. We have a few more days in our rehearsal period than most other companies do. It gives them the time to rehearse. We rehearse in our space where we perform. Also quite a rarity. You normally don't get to see the space or the set until dress rehearsal, when you're also hearing the orchestra for the first time. So we stretch that out, giving them all just a little bit more time to get used to everything. And we do 4 performances, and that's also a way of solidifying the roles that they're going to be working on and developing for major companies around the world.
That's wonderful. And you do it with a full orchestra, correct?
It's called a reduced orchestra. Full orchestras basically are 45 to 65 pieces. We couldn't put them in the hall, but there are standard reductions that many famous people have done to bring down the scale of the orchestra. So we have 25 to 30 pieces based on the work. So it is essentially for the hall a full orchestra, but again, the singers aren't pushing their voices to get them over a 60-piece orchestra, which even in the pit is quite a lot of volume to try to project over.
Right, but it sounds like the audience does have an experience of intimacy and being right there and having this orchestra, reduced or otherwise, and these phenomenal singers right in front of them in a relatively small house. That's great.
Yes, and the intimacy is, for us, very important. We keep the standard proscenium, although sometimes, you know, we have people walk down there for some of the smaller shows, they come down the aisle or all of that. But it's a very small space, and our audience members, especially many of our first-time members, are very moved by that. One of them joked after seeing Butterfly that he felt guilty because he could have reached out and taken the sword out of her hand before she committed suicide.
Yeah.
And our furthest back seats are actually the distance in the Met that's about the third row of the orchestra, where seats are $500, $600 a pop. So we're very close, very intimate for that way.
That's wonderful. And have you found that you've developed quite a following in terms of your audience returning year after year? Or decade after decade in this case?
Decade after decade.
Yeah.
And yes, they not only come, some of them bring their grandchildren to now appropriate shows, and they have developed seats. They order early because they want left J 1, 2, and 3. Right. That is where they sit. First row balcony seats, those types of things. So not only do they come, year after year for the show, but we've now gotten to know them, Kate especially, because she deals with this side of it, that, I sit here, and this is where we go. And they call, and they make sure that those seats are held for them early on in the season. We sell our August tickets in October, and Tosca is already selling quite strongly.
So tell us about Tosca. This is so exciting that this is what we have to look forward to coming up in August for people who are not familiar with the piece.
Well, Tosca is a great opera by a phenomenal composer. So Giacomo Puccini wrote it. What's great about this opera in my mind is that it premiered mid-January in 1900. So it's the first major opera of the 20th century. It dealt with a topic that the audience was not ready to listen to. The concept that there is a man in political power who uses his position for his own personal gain on various levels. This was not something the audience wanted to see on stage.
And yet so relevant.
And yet so relevant today. Yes, absolutely. Right. It was the first full-length Verismo opera. So most Verismo operas like Pagliacci, Cavalleria Rusticana, they were one-act, short, condensed. And this was a full 3-act opera. And with that, the audience was forced to sort of keep on an emotional edge the whole time. It was not well received on opening. The critics were not kind to it. One of it called it a shabby little shocker. Another one referred to 3 hours of screaming.
My goodness.
But the audiences went to it, and especially, I must say, after World War II, the European productions grew exponentially. But it is also the story of personalities. So you have these political figures who all get together. So this is set in Rome. Napoleon has captured Rome. He's then been beaten back out of Rome, and the royal family has come back, Queen Marguerite. And Tosca is one of the great singers in the royal court. But she has fallen in love with a newcomer to Rome, an artist by the name of Mario Cavaradossi, who is, as he's referred to, a Voltairian. He follows the writings of Voltaire. And so it's kind of like having a right-wing and left-wing love affair. And in there we have Baron Scarpia, who is the head of the secret police, and he's trying to catch Mario in treason, and at the same time he's trying to force Tosca to sleep with him. Oh. And great parts of it take place in a church. There's a false execution that turns out to be real. It's quite a simple plot to follow. It really is a story of 3 people caught in some amazing political turmoil at the time. So it's a great audience. It's a great audience pleaser, and it's a very good first opera.
That's good to know.
It is. There's nothing esoteric, tricky, problematic with the music. It's written straight harmonic. There's no 12-tone or 5-note scales in it. Glorious music. There's at least 2 arias that people who say, oh, I don't know anything about opera, there's 2 arias in there that they will recognize by the music simply because they're ubiquitous. They're even used in commercials. They're used in backgrounds for movies, just things like that. So everybody has heard parts of the music. It's got comedy in it at the beginning to sort of set things up. And you know, there's a big chorus number, a giant Te Deum. One of the opera pieces of music that in my mind can never be performed too loudly. It's just a big piece. So it's a very, very good opera. The plot moves along quite naturally. It was based on a French play that was written for Sarah Bernhardt that Puccini saw in 1897 when he was in Paris, fell in love with it, and decided he was going to turn it into an opera. And it's proved to be a great success, long-lasting in its time.
That's great, right. So for those of you out there that haven't been to an opera before, it sounds like Tosca is really the perfect introduction for all of you to get a sense of what that whole world is like, and to be able to do it right in your own backyard is truly an extraordinary opportunity. So for people out there that want to learn more about the company, want to get tickets, where do they go?
We have a website, operatheaterofct.org. You can also call the office. We're fine with talking you through whatever, and that's 860-669-8999.
Okay, great. And I heard also that you provide pre-show talks to give more information about what people are about to see, which I think is wonderful, because often people feel like, as you alluded to, they're a little intimidated to jump into the world of opera if they're not familiar with the story and the characters and all of the details. So tell us about those.
So 30 minutes before each of the shows, no, sorry, an hour and a half before each of the shows, I give a 30-minute talk on the opera. So I talk about Puccini, in this case, I'll talk about Puccini's life, how he started into being a composer, great stories of you know, him being the starving artist while he was studying at the Paris Conservatory and all of that. And then how the opera came about. There's wonderful stories. He had to write back and forth with Sardou. He was very unhappy with the way the opera was progressing until Sardou told him to just get on with it. And then one of the great things about Tosca, and one of my favorite things to talk about, is there are more performance disasters with the opera Tosca than there are pretty much with any other opera that I can think of. One of the great ones is probably not giving the ending of the opera away to everyone, because we actually believe you need to know about the opera before you attend it, is that at the end of it, Tosca jumps off a parapet and commits suicide. Well, in the 1960s at City Opera, there was a soprano who had successfully offended everybody in the crew, and on the night of the final performance, they replaced the mattresses at the bottom of the set with a trampoline, so that when she jumped down and hit the mattresses, she ended up bouncing back up high enough for members of the audience to hear her, and she bounced 2 or 3 times, mumbling and cursing, as the crew will have you know, all the way. She said she was laughing, but according to the crew, no, not so. So that's one of the great stories. There's another one which I'll tell just a little bit of the, there's an execution, a firing squad, and they had never been rehearsed, and they didn't know what to do. So at the end of the show, when Tosca jumped off the parapet, they jumped off the parapet with her. There's just a wonderful, wonderful examples of technological failures and all of that. So it's a great show.
A lot of entertainment behind the scenes, it sounds like, in terms of the backstories of what have happened in previous productions.
Absolutely.
But hopefully your production will be, all the drama will be happening on stage and not backstage.
Correct. And we plan to have that. It's never, it's not unusual that something does always go just a little bit awry. But, you know, we work our way through it. And again, consummate professionals or young professionals working hard to make sure that everything works well.
Right. Well, thank you so much for all of your efforts and Kate's efforts in terms of keeping professional opera a part of our offerings and landscape of the arts in Connecticut. It is so important. And again, I would encourage people to not be afraid. Opera is something that really captures the imagination like no other art form, I think. And Tosca is the perfect introduction to that world. So certainly don't hesitate, get your tickets, but get them soon, right?
Get them soon.
I think they're selling out quite quickly. So it's important to get online or call the box office and jump into that world this summer. It's a beautiful, beautiful venue. It's air conditioned.
Air conditioned.
So don't be afraid of the weather, and come out and spend a really enjoyable evening with Opera Theater of Connecticut. So thank you so much, Alan. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Carly.
Thank you for
Always
being
a
our guest
pleasure.
today, and I look forward to being in the audience for Tosca.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Welcome back to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Carly Callahan, and I am so happy today to also welcome Keely Knudsen, who is the artistic director of Legacy Theater, as well as Jeremy Funk, who is the theater manager and is also starring in their upcoming production of Hamlet, which will be on the green in Guilford, right around the corner, in fact. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having
It's a
us.
pleasure to have you both. So Legacy Theater, I know that Legacy Theater has a really interesting history, and there's so much going on with the company. Before we get into Hamlet, which I can't wait to hear about, let's talk about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you. So Legacy Theater was founded in 2011, and we did a feasibility study to determine if there was a theater, conservatory, and professional repertory company along the shoreline, where would it be, and what size and scope should it be. So the feasibility study came back in 2012 and said if we were in Madison, Guilford, or Branford, and if we had a 350-seat or less theater with the conservatory component, that it would be a great success. That evidently our audiences out here are educated and affluent enough that they would support this type of thing, but they don't want to cross the Q Bridge.
I see.
So
That's the big
that
barrier.
was the big thing, 'cause
Right.
there's so much culture in New Haven as well. So, and theaters as well. So that was what we set out to do. And lo and behold, the Stony Creek Puppet House was for sale. That had all kinds of rich legacy to pass on, which worked very nicely with our theater name. So we endeavored to fundraise to purchase that. So we did. We bought the Stony Creek Puppet House and the neighboring Artist Cottage. And the Artist Cottage is already in use. We had that renovated, and we have visiting artists come in and do compositions, and some that are, working on Broadway right now. So it's been a nice artist cottage to have. And we've also done programming. We've had over 40 different shows and events since 2013 as we've been working towards restoring this.
So when is the restoration scheduled to start?
Well, right now, so if we followed the timeline of our architects, which I love,
Okay.
it seems a little ambitious, but
Right.
it would start construction the end of October, and we would open in July of next year.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
However,
fast.
so the plans we have now are just gorgeous. They have, it's fully accessible. The lobby area is on par with the stage, but then they are digging out so that you've got the sloped audience all the way up to the tech booth. Even the tech booth is handicap accessible. There's a lift that goes up to it, which is kind of unusual for theaters to have that degree of accessibility for even the techies. And it's, we were able to get a big lobby by having, the sloped thing and working underneath it. So it's 128 seats in the current designs, and would be wonderful. Oh, it also has little music boxes, so you've got, the stage and the music boxes up here, so it's like a little opera house.
Oh,
it's so
neat.
charming. It's so, it'd be so unusual and perfect in this community.
Right.
But we have to get into our campaign goal. So
Right.
so we're looking at it now, going, oh, do we need to change some elements of it,
Right.
or are we really committed to fundraising that amount of money to be able to make it happen?
Right. So
that's
there's
where we
the
are
dream,
now. Yes.
and then you're in the process of whittling down to what the reality is going to be.
Yes.
But it sounds like the
Which
reality.
is a wonderful problem to have.
Yes, but the reality is kind of on the horizon.
It is.
That's
On
wonderful.
the cusp. We are
That's
very
wonderful, and I
grateful.
love that you have housing for some of these artists to be able to do what they need to do and get out of the city and work and create, and then be able to perform right next door. That's great.
In the 20s, it has a rich history, and in the 20s, people would come from Boston and from New York City to this very venue in order to see shows by Orson Welles and the Mercury Players there. So it's got a lot of history.
So
and
there's a history there that you're
if we rebuild
revisiting.
it, they will come.
They will come. I am sure that they will absolutely do that. That's really exciting. So I also have heard, though, that you're very much in the present moment I know that Shoreline Arts Alliance presents Shakespeare on the shoreline, and that Legacy Theater this year is going to be presenting Hamlet,
Yes.
which is, and I believe that I have Hamlet himself sitting right in front of me. Is that correct?
No, this is the one. This is the one. Look no further.
That's great. So how did this all come to pass?
Keely shot me a text one morning and basically asked me if I would like to play Hamlet, and I said sure.
That's an actor's dream come
Yeah.
true, I think.
Well,
Yeah,
and
it
he's
didn't hurt.
just the best.
It's-
I mean, in terms of Shakespearean actors to play this role, I couldn't think of a dreamier choice than Jeremy. So I was really keeping my fingers crossed at the time he was based in New York City. I wasn't sure if he would be in the area or available. And I had approached Eric with the Shoreline Arts Alliance because I knew there was a vacancy this year with the Shakespeare on the Shoreline. And I thought, well, what better time for us to be out of doors doing Shakespeare, since next summer hopefully we'll be in of doors.
Right.
So this was kind of the opportunity, and to also get our name out there in the Guilford community.
What a perfect coincidence or fate or whatever you.
Yes,
So
kismet.
tell us
Kismet
a
is
little
what we're
bit,
doing,
our
yeah.
audience, a little bit about you as an actor. What is a little bio so that they can
Oh gosh.
know what they have in store? You're New York based primarily.
No, I was in New York for about a year. I was in New
Okay.
Haven for 12 years.
Okay.
And worked with a handful of community theaters, and before really kind of locking into Elm Shakespeare for quite a lot of my time there. So I was with Elm Shakespeare for 10 years every summer, and yeah, I'm not sure what else to
Yeah.
tell you.
For those
It's
that don't know, Elm Shakespeare is one of the finest Shakespeare companies around. Our state is so lucky to have it.
Yes.
And Jeremy and I met each other in
Yep.
Elm Shakespeare because I was their choreographer for many years and an actor
Okay.
as well. And so that's how I knew him. And yeah, Elm's been
It always
wonderful to us.
circles back.
It's-
So
yes.
Hamlet, I mean, obviously with Shakespeare on the Shoreline, we're limited to Shakespeare. Why Hamlet?
Hamlet is, it's very well known. You know, the title alone, even if people don't know it, they were probably forced to have faked reading it
Yeah.
when they were in school.
Cliff
so
notes.
Right.
Yep.
So it's very, in terms of audience buy-in, it's a very accessible title to have. And then, honestly, it was talent. I thought about who it was that I would love to work with to create this piece. When I was in high school, it was my first opportunity to work on Hamlet. And I went to high school and college and middle school even with James Roday, who was the star of Psych for so many years, and now he's played Sean Spencer. Now he's doing this fall an NBC show called Million Little Things. And so I reached out to him, and he's going to play our Ghost of Hamlet. He'll be voiceovering that. And I reached out to Jeremy to play our Hamlet, and I thought with those two and with the design team I had in place with Jamie Burnett on lights and Fred Santor on sound, who's done Shakespeare in the Park for so many years, I thought, well, this will be beautiful. This will be a gift to Guilford to have this type of production here. So
That's great. And the Guilford Green is such a perfect location for this.
is.
And the town of Guilford is just so embraces the arts. And I think it's a wonderful recipient of that gift. Of course,
Okay,
it's open
yeah.
to non-Guilford residents as well. We want everyone from all over Connecticut to come to this.
and
but
typically they do. Typically
yeah,
they do.
that's great.
Yeah, in fact, Eric from Shoreline Arts Alliance showed me the map of Connecticut, and he'd done surveys in the past, and there were like maybe 2 or 3 towns total that were not represented by audience members that came through. Some
Wow.
7,000 come through to see this and create their vacation schedules around this particular event. So it's really a wonderful, and we love, as I was driving around the Guilford Green, visualizing the Episcopal Church that's got that wonderful stonework.
Yes.
We ended up basing our set design after that, so that if you come and you see our set, if you look off in the distance, that church will be kind of an extension of our set design, which is we're setting it in 1100 AD, so it'll be
Okay.
very kind of Gothic and
Right, but have kind of an immersive quality.
absolutely,
That's
and incorporating
neat.
the town.
That is really, really neat. That's going to be absolutely. So, I mean, the challenges obviously of production in an outside space
Yes.
are not insignificant.
Correct.
But what a perfect and welcoming way for people to be able to experience Shakespeare without having to be, in a cramped theater somewhere. I think
Yes.
that's great. And these tickets are free. Is that correct?
It's free. The Shoreline Arts Alliance is accepting donations throughout the event. So, buckets will be passed, but you can go absolutely free. Yes.
Right. And there are other kind of corollary Hamlet endeavors that are happening in relation to this, right?
Yes.
And what are some of those?
Well, Keely's got, is it 4 lectures that are?
5 now.
5 now. Oh, well, wait.
Yes.
Spread out throughout the rehearsal process and possibly production week. So we have those happening.
And where are those going to be?
They're all up and down the Shoreline, in Guilford and Madison and Brantford.
Okay.
And the Shoreline Arts Alliance is getting those dates and locations pulled together now. So,
Neat.
So we'll have more information on that later.
Great.
But then we also have this wonderful children's production that Jeremy has created that's just fabulous to be able to take a Hamlet and put it into a children's show, which is
a reduced Hamlet.
It is very much reduced. It's
That's great, though.
It's 3 actors in about 40 minutes. Basically just telling the story as creatively and quickly as they can.
Okay, so these are professional actors who are going to be speaking to an audience of children.
Yes.
correct.
Neat.
Yeah.
So how is that, where are these children going to be? Are you going into schools or?
We're going, I believe they're all outdoor locations, at least the ones that
Well, a couple are. So we have the Brantford Festival, which is coming up, I think, the weekend of Father's Day. We'll be doing some sort of Hamlet presentation there. And then we're also doing the children's Hamlet Abridged will be at the Surf Club. It'll be at the Brantford Library, the larger one there. And that one is sensory friendly. So all audiences are welcome. We'll make sure that there's quiet boxes and no amplification and that sort of thing. Then at Jacobs Beach, we're having one during one of the summer camps that they have through the town. And they just keep adding on. So throughout the
You guys
summer,
are
if you
busy.
want us, call us. But those are great. It's funny because Hamlet is a very heavy piece. There's by the end, who's left standing? Very few. But it's and by the way, Richard Squarey is flying out from LA to be our stage combat choreographer, and he's unbelievable. Very big in the world of fight combat on stage and on screen.
Right.
So we're very lucky to have him. It'll be amazing fight choreography. But that being said, we're going to tame it down, of course, for the children's shows, and it's all very much like plastic, and commentary on it that's contemporary and funny and engaging, so that the goal, the objective of that is to have all audiences understand the plot line of Hamlet for when they come to the main stage production of it.
And we always talk about audience development and how do we make sure that our kids and our kids' kids are going to be partaking in live theater, and I think it's wonderful that you're offering a way for these kids to get exposure to the piece and then potentially be accompanied by their parents when they're coming to the real thing and have some context for what they're about to see. I think that really takes the fear factor away from Shakespeare. And as our audiences remember, I was just speaking to Alan Mann from Opera Theater of Connecticut, and similarly, there's always the challenge of people saying, oh, I don't know about opera, I don't think I'm going to like it. But you just give it a try, and you're sure to really fall in love with a compelling piece like Tosca. And I think similarly, Hamlet on the green, for free, presented professionally with such an astonishingly great, it sounds like, production team is a complete win.
Yes.
So remind us of the dates.
August 1st through the 5th,
Yes.
7:30.
Okay. And for more information, where do people go to learn about where to show up and where to park and all of that good stuff?
Go to our website. There'll be a link there, www.legacytheatre. It's Legacy, then theater with an R-E, Theatre, CT for Connecticut.org.
Okay, and that'll tell us everything that we need to know about the artists and the production itself. Well, this is so exciting.
Thank you.
Congratulations to both of you for
Thank you very
being
much.
part of such a wonderful initiative on the Shoreline. Right around the corner.
Oh, it's our
Very
pleasure.
ambitious
Our
schedule, but I
pleasure.
can hardly wait
Win-win.
to see it. That's
Thank you.
great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Our pleasure. Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you for having
care.
us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm Carly Callahan. Welcome back to Spotlight on the Arts. I am so happy to be here today for our summer episode with just a fantastic group of people who are coming to us from the East Haddam Stage Company. Welcome to all of you. Today we have Candy Carl, who is the producing artistic director of the company, as well as 2 of their actors in their upcoming productions. They are George Lombardo and Maggie Walsh. Welcome all of you to the show. Thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome.
So you are in the thick of it and
Oh,
about
yes.
to present something that's really quite special. And I really, when I first met you, Candy, I was so excited to hear about that you are producing work right at Gillette Castle. How special is that? That really makes you different, innovative, exciting, all those buzzwords that we love to talk about in the theater. How did that all come to be?
Well, it is all of those things that you said and more, because across the country, in every state, you have state parks, you have national parks, and they do Shakespeare in the park, or they do music in the park, or they do fill in the blank. Well, here was a state park that wouldn't exist if it weren't for an actor. And to not have theater going on there was a real surprise to me. And when I launched the company in 2002, I said to myself, this is a golden opportunity to go up to the castle and present the idea that really, no-brainer, should have been there already.
Yes.
And I thought, I wonder why it hasn't been. And could I go ahead and attempt it? And I talked to the then supervisor, and they speak park. You know, William Gillette was a great, phenomenal Victorian rock star actor who created Sherlock Holmes for the stage. He's a Connecticut native. His father was a senator, and they interpret his story through the house, his retirement house that he built there on the hillside. And yet they had never thought of doing, they had had special events through the Friends group and other things, but never had an established theater, regular theater season there. And I said, I would like to do that. And there were some people who at the time thought, okay, how's that gonna work? I said, don't worry. And I went away and I said, I can make this work. Because I had come from a wide range of theatrical styles in my background. Musical theater, big broad musical theater, intimate theater, black box stuff, everything from Shakespeare, musical theater, everything in between. And I knew that, especially with some of the outdoor theater that I had done, that it was a perfect little site for it. And so I knew a lot that they didn't already know. And I tried to get them up to speed, but they spoke park, they didn't speak arts. So I had to learn how to speak park.
And I imagine you're pretty fluent now.
I am so fluent. Anything you want to know about, Yes, I did. I learned to speak park. And so it was a real partnership from the beginning as far as I was concerned. So the first year they let me go for it. And I took, because William Gillette was not only an actor, but he was a playwright, he produced things, there are 2 patents that still exist that haven't been improved on that he created for stage effects, for live theater stage effects. So there's a depth of interpretation available from the theater and acting side that they were not able to do because they were set up to be park and park rangers and trails and things like that. So it's a real interesting collaboration between a historic site, which is what the house really is, a state entity, the DEEP, that actually runs that site, and a non-union professional theater company that our mission is minimal set, maximum connection. So they had to learn my speak a little bit, but it was much more important that I understood their speak because I was going to have my company as a guest on site.
And was there a self-evident place on site that you immediately recognized as saying, this is where I'm going to do this?
Absolutely. They didn't, of course, know that. They're like, well, where would you do it? I'm like, right there. Okay. It's like I had already, I had moved to Connecticut in 1992. I always wanted to live in New England. And I had done a lot of different theaters. I toured with the National Theater of the Deaf. I had done a lot of things around the state, and I had been, obviously, up to Gillette Castle several times. And I already had in the back of my head, that right there would be a perfect little mini amphitheater. I had already had that. So when they asked me the question, I went, I know exactly where it is. They have a stone outbuilding that wasn't originally built when he created his wonderful home. But when the state took it over as a state park, they built a beautiful stone building as bathrooms. And when they built their beautiful visitor center, that became their nature center. They had nature programs there, they had sleepovers, all kinds of things. But of course, as we all know, the budget got tight, and so all of those nature programs had to go by the wayside. The building was empty.
Oh, so that's perfect.
It's perfect. And we had the wonderful stone wall. The first show, It was a test show, and of course I knew it was going to be perfect and wonderful. Of course I did. You have to go into these things with confidence, or
Yes.
people don't trust that you're going to pull off what you
Right.
say you're going to pull off.
I agree.
And I went into William Gillette's history of playwriting, and he had done a wonderful rendition of a German farce called All the Comforts of Home. And I said, this is perfect. Mistaken identities, it's fun. But I also realized that people are coming there to go through the house. They're there to walk the grounds and hike and picnic and see the views. So I couldn't do a 2-hour show. So I had to take his multi-act, multi-character, multi-animal play and narrow it down to 30 minutes. I put it on, All the Comforts of Home. It was so popular with the visitors and so popular with the fans of the East Haddam Stage Company, because we had developed a number of different things up to that, that the subsequent second and third years were funded with grants from the Connecticut Humanities.
Great.
And
Good for
from that
you.
moment on,
Yeah.
it just took off. So it's been, the engine that could.
Right.
And with now a new supervisor who's worked there all his life, but is now into the supervisor position, Phil Uris, he never has spoken arts, but to his infinite credit, he understands the value of what we put there as a gift to the visitors. And he could not do enough to assist us. Once he became interim supervisor, he built the stage, he put in the bleacher seating, he had his staff build us bench seats. He said, use the building, it's empty. So it's to his credit that he, along the way, had understood the value that we bring to the site. And now, in 2017, he gave us the status as resident theater company at Gillette Castle State Park.
That's wonderful. So it's really taking theater and making the space a living history.
Yes.
Right, and making it relevant to audiences today. Now, I love the idea of minimal set, maximum impact. I think that that's wonderful. I also love the idea of encapsulating these longer productions into a shorter time frame and therefore making them more accessible. So is the idea that someone visits Gillette Castle and they're just wandering through and they see that you're doing a performance and they happen to go see the performance? So a lot of it is an audience that wouldn't necessarily know in the morning that they're going to the theater and yet end up at
Early
a theatrical
on,
production?
yes.
Okay.
It was more, what's going on over
Right.
there? But now, and you'll notice that I have in all of our promotional materials, feel free to bring your comfy chair, because we have anywhere from 100 to 200. One time we had 300 people there to see a show.
Wow.
And so it's a combination of people who know we're going to be there and people who happen to be there and walking by. National, international, local, state, New England. And so I put on the thing, bring your comfy chair.
Right.
And that's how we know who has either been our fan base,
Right.
let's call it, that follows the East Haddam Stage Company.
Right.
I can see them coming down the path with their chairs
Right.
ready to go. So it's about 60%, 40% right now.
That's
We've
great.
had about, almost 50-50 where it's people who are there who go, wow, something that's wonderful. And others who go, what's next? In January, I got an email from a fan who said, when's the shows? When's the shows? I want to make sure that I
Oh,
come.
good for you.
And it's now because we get local business sponsorship, which is very important to us. Staley Farm and Winery of East Haddam, the last few years has been a really major sponsor. And they understand the value of, the shopping local kind of idea.
Right.
And I love that. And part of our mission is, of course, we live in Connecticut, and it's 2.5 hours to Boston, it's 2.5 hours to New York City, and so many theater, the Big Five, the Big Seven here in Connecticut, they go to those places to find talent. One of our missions is we only use Connecticut talent. There are so many fabulous actors, writers, poets, and the students that I've had as interns. I want to give them the opportunity where they want to do theater, the quality theater, they want to do it here. They don't want to have to go to the New York path,
Right.
et cetera. So we are that company. It's there's so many fabulous community theaters here in the state, and of course we've got the big theaters, and there's a few regionals in between, and we're in that wheelhouse of people who want to do higher quality, but aren't going that whole equity route.
Right, that's great, and we have representation of that with us today, which
Yes.
is so wonderful. We have Maggie and George. So how did you two find this company, or did the company find you? What was the story of how this came to be?
There's interesting stories here.
I would imagine. Wait till who's first?
Okay. Well, I had actually, I just finished my freshman year at college in Washington, D.C., and I had just gotten home like the night before, and I saw my mom had sent me something that Candy was looking for an actor to play this role, and so I just went and did an audition, and it worked out, and it was great.
And that was for this season? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, so you're
So
relatively
first
new to this
time,
company. Great. Great. And had you had any familiarity with the company beforehand, or is this your first
yeah.
exposure?
Yeah, I had been up to Gillette Castle a few times, never recently.
Right,
But yeah.
right.
So, and now I'm just like amazed by everything that's going
so
on.
great.
So,
So is your ambition to be a professional actress in Connecticut?
I am currently, I'm double majoring, so I'm doing international affairs and theater, so trying to figure out which of the two.
But how
I'm gonna
wonderful
go
to
for.
be able to experience
Yeah,
a professional company right in
It's
your
my
own
first time
backyard.
doing a professional show.
Great.
So.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
exciting.
you.
And how about you?
And how about me? Well,
Yeah.
we're at the opposite end of things. She's starting out, and I'm finishing up. I've been acting all my life, but I've always been working all my life. Never made a living doing it. Just retired in January from a business I owned, a piano tuning business.
Oh.
So now I'm free to pursue more.
Okay.
Candy's company is just, it's what's unique about it, besides the quality, it's amazing quality of the work she does, is the fact that I'm one of those local Connecticut actors who never did the New York thing. I've done enough theater in New York to be eligible to join equity, but it just doesn't make sense where I'm at. And the minimal set, maximal connection is really enticing. But she makes a point of making sure that she never does anything without paying her actors, and that is it's not easy to find.
That's great.
You know?
It is, and I think it really makes a statement to artists that we all have value, even if that value isn't necessarily what we would like it to be monetarily. It really indicates that it's a professional, and I feel like it engenders a certain standard and ethics and all these wonderful things. So good for you for doing that.
Yeah.
I think that that's great.
Yeah. No one ever gets what they're worth, but
No.
who does?
Not in this business, but we all endeavor to keep on striving towards that, right?
Right.
So this production in particular, for audiences that don't know much, fill us in.
Well, this was quite the path, let me tell you. Because I had experience in researching a lot of the shows that William Gillette was in or finagled or wrote or adapted, etc., beyond and before Sherlock Holmes and after he did Sherlock Holmes. You know how we always get typecast, and unfortunately he was typecast because he did Sherlock Holmes so well. He still did things afterwards that weren't Sherlock, but everyone wanted him to do that. But prior to that, he was 42 when he started the role of Sherlock Holmes. He had a 25-year career in theater prior to that. And so I started trying to decipher where he had done shows, what shows had he done, and which ones had he written, because it is Gillette Castle State Park, and I want to make sure that not only do we do things that were of his time that he was in, but what about his works?
Right.
So that's why I launched with All the Comforts of Home, and then we did the 1930 radio show, Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Speckled Band, which William Gillette did in 1930 out of New York City. We did that at Gillette Castle. That was so popular that we now are touring that every October.
Oh,
so
neat.
this October we're having every day we hope there's going to be a show of Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Speckled Band. We set it in 1930. It's a radio studio audience live theater piece. So I was really excited to get that. And where did I find it, you might ask? at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center.
Oh, okay.
William Gillette's family is part of the Nook Farm area, Mark Twain, the Garners,
Right.
etc. And they hold this Lincoln collection, which got too big for whoever was managing it back in the day, and so now they're caretakers. So I discovered that all these scripts and a lot of his papers were being held by the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center. Oh,
Right.
and so I said, well, let me go up there. I know he wrote, one of his first plays that he wrote himself from scratch was The Professor. So I went up to the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center. I know the curator there, and I said, is there any chance? And I spent a couple hours and found his original late 1870s notebooks that he actually hand wrote the entire show.
Wow.
It's 5 acts.
5.
It goes on
Oh my
and
gosh.
on and on, because we're talking about a time period where people went to the opera, they went to the
Right.
ballet, they
They
went
were
to
used
theater.
to that
It was an event.
commitment of time.
Commitment, exactly. Well, we don't have that commitment these days. Even the major theaters are cutting things down to 90 minutes
Right.
and 1 acts. And because of what I have to do there at the castle, I thought, how am I going to get this down? So I was on tenterhooks for a while until I really dissected it, and I've been doing this long enough that I pulled the love story out. So I went, let's go with the love story. There's multiple things. There's a detective who's incognito. There's all these young men from us. It's like it goes on and on. And it's set at a resort, an outdoor, wonderful resort in New Hampshire. So what I did was I narrowed it down to 30 minutes and I set it at the Seventh Sister Inn. So now the inn is actually in Connecticut
Okay.
because Gillette Castle, he never called it that, he called it the Seventh Sister.
Oh,
And that's
neat.
why I named it that. And I
Neat
narrowed
tie-in.
it down to the 30 minutes, and then I started, fishing for actors for each one of these roles. And that was the hardest part this year, was finding the people for the roles.
So you're very lucky to come upon these two.
Yeah, and that's another mission that I've always had. A lot of theaters, they announce their season well in advance, and then they cross their fingers that they're going to be able to cast them and get everything that they need going. I don't work quite like that. I, 6 to 9 months out, know what I'm hoping to do, but if I can't find the right people to do it, I always have something in my back pocket.
Smart.
And it was just providential. I had held 3 different auditions trying to find my Daisy. I couldn't find my Daisy. 1890s, ingenue, educated young woman who could portray a 19-year-old who wasn't 21st century.
Right.
That's a lot to ask
That is
for
a
a
lot to ask,
19-year-old.
yes.
And I found that.
Dang, she does an amazing
She
job.
does.
Wonderful. And what's your character?
I am her father,
Okay.
and I'm typical father, top hat and tails, which is really great. I just
Little
love the
overprotective,
costume
yeah.
there. Very protective. I see this young whippersnapper showing up and having ideas about my daughter, and that's the last thing I want.
I see.
So I'm there to keep an eye on things.
Got it.
But they wear me down in the end. Should we give away the end?
Spoiler alert.
Well,
But she did an amazing job of boiling this down into a half
That
hour.
is quite a task
Yeah.
right then and
It's
there. I
amazing.
mean,
It-
that's
and it really works.
right.
well, he originally wrote it as a 5-act, and by the time that this was professionally typed out by a professional typist, but William Gillette did not know a hash mark or a ... that he did not love. By the time this 1890 script, he had gotten rid of the 5 acts and narrowed it down to 4 acts.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. But I had worked with George before, so when he first came to audition, I thought, oh, he's going to be that go-to guy who can, in a short amount of time, in 30 minutes, go from this to this.
Yeah.
And you have to get the right actors who
Yeah.
are capable of doing that arc. And I had trouble getting a professor. It's a hard shoes to fill because William Gillette wrote it for himself.
Right.
He never got to actually do
Right.
it
Right.
until the 1890s.
Right.
But he wrote it for himself. And we have a wonderful actor, Andrew Gehring from the Essex Ivoryton area, who actually Maggie had been on stage with
Yeah.
in high school. Who knew?
Small
She helped
world.
find them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
So,
great. So for our audience, tell us about how we can get to come see this show. Where do we go? How do we get information?
It's the easiest thing.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part, yeah. We open next weekend, July 7th.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 shows a day, 1 and 2:30. It is wheelchair accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And because of our generous sponsorship with Staley Farm and Winery, it's free to the public. We run through August 12th. We do weekends only. And we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have now a link if you want to see Gillette Castle's official DEEP, Department of Environmental Protection. Their webpage for Gillette Castle State Park has a link to the East Haddam Stage Company website. It's
Great.
just very simple, ehsco.org. And we have the information there on our Facebook page. And like I said, we have a new young whippersnapper of a production assistant,
Yeah.
Rana Jean Adams.
Right.
She is our go-to social media, so you'll find us all over that.
Right.
And again, it's a number of different ways that you can find out about us. And if anybody wants to join our e-blast list, we have a constant contact to keep people alerted of when shows are taking place. And unless there's actually rain coming out of the sky,
I was going to
at-
ask that.
yeah, at showtime, the show goes on.
That's really awesome. So
Yeah.
the show does go on most
show
of
goes
the
on.
time. And I want to reiterate to our audience, which is so exciting about this, is it's a half-hour
Yes.
show.
Yeah.
So you can certainly find time in your schedule. I would hope this summer to get out to Gillette Castle, which if you haven't been is kind of a wondrous New England, Connecticut experience, a bit magical in and of itself. And then when you couple that with a production 30 minutes long with professional actors, with thematically inspired by our state and our place, I think it's a complete win. And now, is there an admission charge for coming to your show?
No, there's no admission charge for the show. There's no admission to the park. They only have a nominal $6 ticket if you want to tour the house.
Perfection.
It is
So
perfection.
a free event in the summer
Yes.
on the beautiful banks of the river at Gillette Castle. That's pretty awesome, if I do
is.
say so myself. So I
I
certainly look forward to getting out there to see your production. That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate you being a part of the program, and we will see you at the show. Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you.